we work with our selection process to decide who to work with and how to pace the books that way. So this is just kind of the short spiel about being an independent publisher. We're really looking to create unique works, and as an independent publisher, the partnership and the relationship with the artist is really the primary driver of how we select the projects that we're going to do moving forward. I have to figure out how to. Oh, this is just a collage I made. A bunch of books, and it's kind of ridiculous because it took me an insanely long amount of time, which is why I'm making you all look at it for several seconds now. It did come out nice, right? I mean, looks beautiful. So this is a collage of a bunch of titles that are mostly printed. You'll see Marcy's in the bottom right-hand corner. Your Eternity, You're the Mirror, which is a mock-up of the cover since it's about to go to press and hasn't been printed yet. So why a photo book? I'm sure most people, most photographers, most image makers think about whether they would want to publish their work. And the way that I see it, there are three kind of major reasons that a photo book could be a good decision. The biggest one is just exposure. It's a great way to get your work out into the world and get it in front of people that will help you move your goals forward. So whether that's curators, you might get press articles about it, you'll get seen by a wider general audience. And it's also a great way to, or a great reason for a gallery to want to show your work. You know, you can say, I have a book coming out and we can coincide the launch with an exhibition, and it's a great catalyst. I have on the right an example of a book that I published called Too Tired for Sunshine by Tara Ray. And it was really interesting because Tara reached out to me, just a blind submission through email. And I thought the project was really interesting. I'd never heard of her, and I didn't know whether she had a very large audience. She didn't have any gallery representation, but the book and the work really took off and led to a lot of exhibitions and opportunities for her, got a ton of press coverage. And then she was able to kind of parlay that book into this Too Tired project. So, and really created a large community that's very active online on social media about people who deal with depression and use photography as a way to cope, which is what the Too Tired for Sunshine project was about for her. So she took something that was really personal, and we created a book that resonated with a much wider audience. And then from there was able to really do a ton more with it. So it can be, like I said, a great opportunity, a great catalyst. Accessibility, most of the time, or in a lot of cases, I should say, especially with a more narrative project, it's more powerful to see a group of images all together than maybe one off here and there, or it at least gives the viewer an opportunity to have a fuller picture of what the artist is trying to say. So being able to see them all in one place, not being tied to a physical location like a gallery or museum to have to see the work, and the affordability of being able to purchase a book for $30 or $50 as opposed to thousands of dollars potentially for a single image. And then legacy, I mean, it kind of goes without saying, but like, you know, to be able to hold something printed in your hand that will live beyond you, a physical object, is really a powerful thing. And I think a huge driver for a lot of people to want to publish. I have in italics at the bottom that not every project is suited for a book, and I think it's really easy to get caught up in the legacy and the exciting parts about publishing, but it's expensive, it's time consuming, it takes a lot of resources. Not just only creating the work is just a part of it, you know, developing it into a book, and then all of the promotion and the selling and all of that after is a really big investment of your time and resources. And I just caution people to be thoughtful about what project to publish and why, and what opportunities there are to help it help the trajectory of your career, and to really be thoughtful about which project and when and how to publish it and with whom. I forgot to mention. So I also showed on the bottom right is Louis Palou's Front Towards Enemy, which is actually the second book that we published with Yoffy Press. It's a great example of accessibility. He was embedded with troops in Afghanistan over the course of 5 years, and he photographed that war in several different ways. And on part of the design decisions that we made, we ended up doing these separate components. So there are loose soldier portraits, an accordion fold, a newsprint, and a more traditional zine. Part of the reason was that he had such different stylistic choices in how he approached this photography that we wanted to separate them. But the other is that Louis and I both, in different ways, are very committed to accessibility and getting work out there, and getting me more from the side of allowing the artist to get the exposure and the recognition that they are seeking to get from really strong work, and him more on the side of not being too precious with imagery. And because he's a photojournalist, he wants to make sure that what he is creating is getting seen by a large group of people, because he's making a statement about it. So we created it in a way that the entire book, which comes in that slipcase cover in the bottom, can be hung as a pop-up exhibition, which he did in several places. And it was a really fun idea, and it comes with these like IKEA style instructions. So just another example of how the format, and that he was able to get this work out in a really different way, and make it accessible to audiences that his general magazine work wasn't getting the same impact of being able to package it all together. And I thought I would talk a little bit about what we look for in a project with Yoffy Press. This is our mission statement, which is important. It really guides everything that we do, not only how we select projects, but how we work with artists, and what is important in terms of the partnership and the relationship from the beginning to the end. And usually, Marcy can attest to this, in my very first phone call, there are a couple of things that I talk about that are really important. One is, I would say quality is meaning both in terms of the work and the project. It really needs to stand up and hold its own as individual images, as a body of work. But also, and this is going to sound weird, but like the quality of the person is really important. Marcy and I had this discussion right away. I have a very strong, strict no asshole policy. I'm really only interested in working with people that are open and transparent and motivated and excited, and bring a lot to the table in the partnership, which is the second aspect. Because the way that I have structured Yoffy Press, it's really about the partnership from day one all the way through until the books are sold. So, and that impacts how the artist and I collaborate and work together on the design, how we coming up with a plan to promote it and market it, to how we're going to sell the project, and everyone having a part in that. So we both participate in the upfront investment part of creating the book, and then we also split the profits all the way through, and it really creates a partnership from the beginning to the end. So we're both accountable to each other to sell the books. It's not like, okay, the book's made, here you go, good luck, from either side. So that's a really, really important part of why I started this press and imprint, and what I get out of it personally. And then design, I talk about in the next slide, but at that last bullet point, we create beautiful objects that marry design to content. So, yeah. What this means to me, and again, this is sort of the third thing I talk about in that initial conversation, is I'm not interested in making anything that looks like an exhibition catalog. So what's important to me and to the imprint is that we create projects. We take a project and we create an experience of viewing it that's unique to the book. So if you were going to look at a project online, you would have one experience of viewing it. If you're going to look at it in an exhibition, you'll have another experience of it. And if you look at the book, it's going to give you a completely different view. And Marcy's, well, I'm going to talk about these and then why Marcy's work is a great example of this. So this one on the left is the book Havana Youth by Greg Kahn. And he photographed these kind of late teens, early 20s kids in Cuba. And they were born during what's called the special period. They were creating a new kind of counterculture in Cuba, and he has these beautiful images. He's a photojournalist. But we also, because these kids are all really part of the new creative class, we wanted to make sure to represent that. And so this is a picture of the zine that comes with the book, and it's tucked in the back end pages. And the zine is work by the kids who are photographed in the main part of the book. So it's their essays in Spanish and in English, and their creative output. So it's their photographs, their fashion designs, their DJ posters. So that's a great, in my opinion, example of elevating the images with design elements to create a fuller, richer experience of the project. The bottom right is I've Always Been a Cowboy in My Heart by Sandy Carson. He's a Scottish photographer who lives in Austin, Texas, and has for a decade or more. And he takes these pictures kind of driving around, and he happens to see the most bizarre things you could possibly imagine and photographs them. And we wanted it to be, to have some of his thoughts and musings about wandering around America and seeing the most bizarre things. And so we added this postcard element as breaks within the book. So the picture on the left is actually one of his photographs that we the designer made to look like the front of a postcard. And then the back is also created by the designer using some weird facts about each place and interesting stamps. And so we physically created this postcard, and then Sandy hand wrote some thoughts on it. It's basically letters back to his family in Scotland about the odd things he's seeing. And then the top right is a very small design example of the triptych series that we do, which is 3 artists who all create a body of work around a common theme, which is the title. And this is just showing how when you lay and this is true for all the triptychs, when you lay the 3 books together, it spells out the title across the front. And so just another way, like a really small design element that connects the 3 books together. And the last slide I have, this is kind of the description for Marcy's book. And when she and I first spoke, we talked a lot about the images, which if you're familiar with them, or you're about to be, because she's going to show you some, are beautiful. And again, first conversation, I don't want to create an exhibition catalog. Obviously, we want to showcase the images, but we talked a lot about what the project was about and what the impetus was in creating the images. And it really, we kind of got to this place where we thought of them as sort of meditations, or that we could present them in a way that we could make this precious object that was really beautiful and that was paired with poetry or words that were meditative and could play off of each other, and that you could, instead of, it is a photo book, but it's also more of a precious object that draws you in with beauty and has these words that help you reflect on it. And there's a lot of gold. That's why I also call it the gold book. And just through the process of collaborating with Marcy and talking through different things that we could do, we were able to add different elements like these French folds. So the pages are all folded with gold in the interior that you'll be able to kind of peek into but not really see. And just some extra kind of design fun things to make it even more beautiful and really heighten that aspect of the work. That's all I got. There's a final slide. So Marcy, do you want to go from here and then we can do questions at the end? I go to unstick.
Yes. Sounds good. Okay, thank you. Okay.
I should also say that Marcy is a love and a delight. And so that whole like quality relationship part was a no-brainer. So that's been the best part working on this project.
You've been amazing to work with and I really appreciate it. So thank you. So I'll talk a little bit about inspiration for the project and then just show you some images from the project. So when I was working on this, or actually thinking about it, I was thinking about Anna Atkins and her botanical studies. And some of you may be familiar with them. If you're not, they were meant as scientific studies, and they were of plants and elements from the natural world, and they were done in the late 1800s. And they were done with this process called cyanotype, where the object was put down on the paper and sunlight exposed the paper, and then the paper was developed and you see the image. What I enjoy about these is actually the abstraction of the form, because you don't see the three-dimensionality, you don't see the texture of it, which is sort of interesting because it was a scientific study. There is this unintended element that makes it a little bit different. And then I was also thinking about some of the surrealist or experimental photographers from the 1920s and 1930s, like Maurice Tabard. And these photographers would use techniques like solarization, or they would overlay images to create something new. And they were very interested in kind of experimenting with depicting not reality, but kind of this fantasy or imagined world or imagined space. And I thought that was really interesting. Dora Maar is another one of the photographers who I was looking at. And, you know, you can, around this time, Freud's ideas were becoming really popular. And so that sort of inspired a lot of these surrealist or more experimental photographers to create imagery that's more dreamlike. And that very much resonated with me. Florence Henri was another one. And she's using botanicals in her work, or fruits, and very much playing with the viewer's perception of space and making it a little bit more disorienting and kind of going away from reality a bit. So I had all those things in mind when I was starting this project. And here it is. So this is my work. And when I was creating this work, the images are made from plants and flowers that I gathered, and then photographed them, printed them on vellum, and then the vellum is backed with gold leaf, either 24 karat or 18 karat gold leaf, and then varnished, and wax is applied to them. They're small, they're intimate, and so having these in this book is really the perfect format. The book itself is going to be a small, sort of intimate book. which I'm very excited about. And I'm excited about the format of it too, with the French folds and just making it kind of its own art object. The images are also an exploration of beauty. And I was really interested in this idea of beauty as an antidote for personal and political crisis. So a place of refuge when, we're going through something like what we're going through now. Um, and so it's interesting how this has become kind of timely. There was a writer named John O'Donohue who states that beauty is not a luxury, but ennobles the heart and reminds us of the infinity within us. So going back to what Jennifer was saying about this becoming kind of a meditation is really significant or an important part of the work. These images in the book are paired with Khalil Gibran's poem On Beauty. And I'm just going to read a little bit of it because you can see more in the book. It is people of Orpheus, beauty is life when life unveils her holy face. But you are life and you are the veil. Beauty is eternity gazing at itself in a mirror, but you are eternity and you are the mirror. So it goes through, in this poem, it goes through all these perceptions of what beauty is and how it can be a part of our lives. And in the end, it's a part of all of us. So I tried to play with different formats or different ways of photographing the images. And some of these images are very quiet and some are louder, like this one, which I see is sort of explosive. And so I'm trying to sort of create a variety within this body of work that can address different ways in which we see or feel beauty. This is the cover image. And then I included a slide of Jennifer's site. So that's yoffypress.com. And I am launching a book pre-sale with prints on my own site. So that's at marcypalmer.com. And thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Marcy.
Thank you.
I don't need to put that slide up now. You just did.
Do you want me to close that? I can.
What should go back now to
Okay.
normal? Okay. Anybody have any questions for either Jennifer or Marcy?
I've got a question for Marcy.
Hey, John, how you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. Good to see you. So in addition to the importance of curating your own work and deciding what you wanted to be within the book, how important to that was the sequencing of each image, one page after another?
It was very important. And Jennifer and I worked together on this, along with a designer that we work with. But it very much sets the tone of it's not exactly a story, but of the meditation and the pace in which you're going through the book. What do you think, Jennifer?
I agree. I mean, we went back and forth a bit, which is usually how I work with artists. Kind of, I think it's helpful for everyone. A lot of times when it's your own work, it's hard to step away from and you kind of see it in a certain way. So usually we have a lot of conversations about it in the beginning. You know, what are you trying to say with the work? What do you want the person who's holding the book in their hands to think or feel or know or learn as a result of experiencing this book? And from there, I usually put together like a starting point of an edit and sequence for the artist to respond to. And then we kind of go back and forth from there. Like what feels right, what still needs some work, you know, and collaboratively.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I have a question to Jennifer. I was actually curious, what is the main criteria of choosing one body of work over another for production, for publishing?
Sure. Like, how do I decide which books I'm going to move forward with? It's a great question, and it's a little bit of everything. I get a lot of submissions. I usually get at least one a day, and I do look at everything that gets sent to me. It can take a minute because I try to review them in batches, but you know, and in some cases, I think Marcy, that was a kind of out of the blue submission, right? You know, so I didn't know Marcy. It turns out we do know a lot of people in common, but at that point I didn't know. So, you know, sometimes I get referrals from artists that I've worked with. Sometimes it's a blind submission. Sometimes it's work that I've been following for a while and I reach out to the artist. But I think that one thing is I really try to have a wide variety of work in the catalog, which I used to own a gallery in Atlanta, and I think it probably stems from that. I personally have a wide range of art that I enjoy stylistically, and so it's important to me, you know, if I just have come out with 2 books that were photojournalistic, that I'm probably not going to jump on a third right away. Actually, Sandy Carson's book, interestingly, was, so I had done Tara Ray's Too Tired for Sunshine, and then someone else, I was talking to another artist who made work that was similar, like a observational kind of wandering musing type imagery. And we were getting pretty far along in terms of talking about working together when Sandy Carson reached out to me, and his work is also similar. And so at that time, I told Sandy that it wasn't the right fit timing wise. And then later, the second person, we ended up not moving forward. Sandy reached back out. So it worked out really well. And now we're doing a second book together. But originally, I had said no because it just wasn't the right timing, and I didn't want the catalog to be stacked too heavily with that type of work. Did that answer your question?
It did, thank you.
I also want to say that I really enjoy the books that Jennifer has put out. They're really different than sort of the standard photo book. You know, I mean, there's a lot of photo books that kind of look the same, and I think that that was something that was really special to me about working with Jennifer, is that she really does have a huge range of books, and some of the formats of the books are really unusual, as she showed. So I think that was great.
Marcy, how big are the prints relative to the size of the book?
The prints themselves are on 8.5 by 11 paper, and the images typically are 7 by 9. I'm actually experimenting a little bit with tiling some of them and making them a little bit bigger, but I'm also experimenting with making them smaller too. And so with the book is 5 by 7, and the images themselves will obviously fit on the page, so they'll be a little bit smaller than that. And so I think that's going to be a really nice experience because it'll be really intimate. So yeah.
Thanks.
Sure.
Anybody else out there?
Yeah, I have a question. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, I want to say thank you for this really remarkable opportunity to hear from both of you, because what you're doing, Jennifer in particular, is so unique. It fits more within the realm of sort of a whole approach to as artist books, the whole notion of different forms, and that the content is driven, the form is driven by the content, and So it's wonderful to see. I wasn't familiar with your press before this, so thank you. And so I'm curious because so much of the world drives people to a consistent, recognizable body of work, and you have chosen to create this incredibly diverse imprint. And could you just talk a little bit about the beginnings of your doing this and how you came to this approach? Because it's so refreshing, and I also just curious about how in the world you're able to produce these things at the prices that you are being able to sell them at. So,
I would say that publishing is it's not a very profitable business. It's a passion project for sure, but I think that how did so my background, I owned a photography gallery and done a nonprofit, and I drove a bus around the country, and I did a lot of things. But I think that kind of the driving force with all of the projects that I've done has really been trying to look at the way that artists are getting their work out, and especially ones that don't already have an audience and are maybe have opportunities to get work out if they had more creative exposure ideas. So that there's a limited number of galleries, not everyone can do that path. It doesn't mean there isn't an audience or people that would appreciate or buy or support your work. It just might not, going through traditional channels might not be the best approach or the most successful, I guess, or in a shorter term period. So with that in mind, a lot of the things that I've done have really been trying to change the way people consume art, look at art, experience it, get their own work out. And with the publishing, I think for me personally, it was just a way to work with great people and be inspired, and also to sorry, this is my dog Pop-Tart. He wants to play with the ball right now. So it's a way to work with artists really intimately, and also take that's my daughter, take this element of the part that I'm also interested in is beyond just the book. It's like, how can you get it out there? How can you get exposure for it? How can you use it to help advance your career? So with Yoffy Press too, what I was noticing in the publishing world was a lot of areas where I felt like photographers, especially less known photographers, were getting taken advantage of, especially financially. And that, so the kind of the way the publishing model was going was troubling to me as a supporter of artists. And so I really wanted to try to figure out a way to do it where good work was getting out there in a way that was more of a partnership, less of the onus only on the artist to fund and promote and sell the work. Did that help? Sorry, there's some distractions in the middle of that. Sweetie, can you not do that right now?
So I have one more question, if I can. What you would advise to artists who are submitting their works to the publishers in terms of presentation? Should they, because we have heard several opinions, I would appreciate yours. A lot of people advise to do a mock-up ebook kind of format. Some people advise to just present a PDF with all images. Someone says give like two options, one your dream book, one a shorter version. So what would be your take on this?
I would say that there are people getting ice in my kitchen. I think that I can only speak for myself. I think a lot of publishers probably want to see a PDF mock-up of, how you envision the book. sometimes when I get those, they are in a format, you know, they've already been kind of workshopped with other designers, and they're in a really great place, and we don't make very many changes and we move from there. That's more rare. It's usually more of a situation like Marcy, where, I mean, I think I saw a link maybe to your website, to your work, and it was really starting from the beginning, which is my preference because that's how I like to work with artists. But I would say that Marcy, do you have because you had, I wasn't the only publisher that you spoke with, so maybe you have some wider scope.
Right. From what I understand is that PDF format is something that some publishers do really like, as you mentioned. I was approached by another publisher, but I had not sent them a PDF. I had work in a show that had gotten some great press, and so I think that was how that happened. So I don't know if that helps.
If I may, ask. When in doubt, ask. So some publishers will only want to see a PDF mock-up. Others just want a pile of images. So ask going in.
Yeah, and it might say on the website, you know,
Yeah.
under the edition page what they prefer.
Okay, thank you.
Jennifer, to branch out on this conversation a minute, I did want to ask you. I've as well as being a photographer, I've been a professional graphic designer for the past 20 years as well, and I've done a couple books for other clients in the past, different types of books as well. So I was wondering, how willing are you to work with someone like myself to do my own book, for example, almost all the way through as a designer, rather than having your team of people take that on? Whereas we would meet, we would have some guidance on what size we would want, talk about any kind of special gutter options or things like that that are book specific, spine things and all the types of layouts, get that dialed in, and then the graphic designer that's also the artist would take the reins. Are you up for that much?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing that with a photographer designer in Italy right now who sent me a PDF of a book that's like perfect. You know, I mean, we are collaborating on the cover and a couple of small things inside, and the writer, 2 writers actually. But other than that, his aesthetic really matched the work. Very, you know, it was very well thought out. And Marcy can tell you, I normally work with the artist and it gets maybe 90% there before I loop in the designer at all. So the artist and I are really doing the edit, the sequence, the layout, all the design concepting. I put it in a really terribly no printer could read it InDesign thing and ask the designer to make it printable, essentially, you know. So when we looped him in, we had some general ideas for cover concepts, right, Marcy? But it was like, okay, we're thinking this, but also if you have a different idea and no idea what fonts, can we see some serif and some sans serif options and that kind of thing? So to answer your question in a really long way, yes, totally open to that.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of where I thought you would end up with that as well. So, and to branch one more question on the end of that, you mentioned exhibition catalog, and I think I know the answer to that, but if you could explain that a little bit more, that'd be great.
Sure. So a lot of times the artist is interested in getting more exhibitions of there's a book coming out, and which is a great way to sell it as well. So I usually create an exhibition catalog, like, sorry, I was thinking exhibition proposal. Exhibition catalog, what I'm trying not to do is if you go to a museum or, you know, you go to a show and it's literally just one image after the other, it's like, these are physically the images you just saw on the wall. No design element, nothing that makes it. The exhibition proposals at the end that I usually help the artist make to send out to galleries and try to get exhibitions up a work in conjunction with the book coming out.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That makes sense.
Okay, anybody else? If not, we'll wrap it up there. Want to thank Jennifer and Marcy for hanging out with us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask one question? I just thought of something. Oh,
Yes,
it's over? Is it over or are we?
go ahead.
Okay. Jennifer, when you get a PDF of images, about how many images do you like to see that reflect a body of work?
I don't have to see that many. I would say if it's not a PDF, if it's not a book layout and it's like, this is the project, maybe 20, but I want to know how many there are to choose from. Because I usually, if it moves forward from there, I usually say, send me everything you want considered for the book. And sometimes I think the Havana Youth book that I showed you that had the zine in the back, I think he sent 600 images. Marcy has a lot fewer. So, and I make prints and I play with them and, put them in piles and move them around. So, I think however many you feel best represents the full breadth of the project without being overwhelming.
Thank you.
Okay. Get back here. So again, here are, oh, that's not okay. Here's the contact information for Jennifer and Marcy and us, if you want to jot that down. Next month, June, we have Forrest McMullen and his latest book, Late Harvest, and John Sanderson with Carbon County as our guests. So hopefully you'll be able to join us in June. And that is going to wrap us up for today. I do thank you all for coming.
It
And
was
we will
really
see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, Bill. Good to see you.
Good to see you, John.
All right.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, Marcy.
Thanks
See you guys
so much,
later.
everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much, Michael. And thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you both. Few lingerers here. They're not leaving.
I don't want to go.
I want to go. I'm very happy with what we got today. We had 39 to 40 people most of the time, which I'm delighted for a first go.
Great.
Jennifer, if there's anybody else in your stable you want to propose we talk to down the road, please feel free.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a particular type of work you're looking for?
Everything. Just,
Okay.
we want to make it as widespread as we can, appeal to as many people.
Okay.
Are you still in the Atlanta area?
Yes.
Okay. And now that I said that earlier, and I better double check that because you might be in Minnesota by now.
No.
No, you're still here. Good. And sometime I want to talk to you about jurying a book show.
Okay.
And it's I've talked to a couple people over the years, and I know it's a lot of work because it's not just looking at an image or two and throwing it away. You have to spend time physically with the books. But we can talk about that at some point and get you to come over and put you up next door for long weekend or something, since we have a
Nice.
hotel next door now.
You do?
Yes, we do.
I haven't been to your space.
No, and we've moved since you were even in the
Greenville.
vicinity last, that I'm
Okay.
aware of. So yeah, we're downtown Greenville now. And
Oh,
we
that's
a new Hyatt right beside us,
okay.
18 inches away.
I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you, guys.
Okay, Marcy, thank you again.
Thanks.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. And I guess that is going to do it for today. Jennifer, thank you again. Let you
No,
get
thank you.
for Saturday.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, we'll talk soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.